to the extent that you even touched the musical area, which is my background. Ladies and gentlemen, the leader of opposition was right. Music is actually both an art and a science. The scientists that are here with us this afternoon will agree with me that science is based on laws and principles. And yes, the artists like Dr. Hildeman will agree with me that art is based on creativity and innovation. But as a musician and other musicians out there, until you study music from the highest level, that's when you're going to understand that actually music has laws and principles, and yet it continues to run around creativity and innovation. So thank you very much for that insight, Right Honorable Leader of Opposition. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to address you today as our parliamentary front launches this alternative budget proposal for the financial year 2023-2024. Many times, regime apologists tend to claim that we do not present any alternative views for Uganda's future. But as you all know, that our 2021 manifesto gave clear and achievable policy alternatives, and we have labored to elaborate these on various occasions. The last time I was here at Parliament, our parliamentary front was launching its legislative agenda. We are again here to highlight some of our policy alternatives and proposals that we would, use to usher Uganda into a new opening. Unfortunately, the guns have not allowed us have that opportunity, but we still believe that we'll have that opportunity. I want to thank you for today, Right Honorable Leader of Opposition and your team for this. Ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard, our alternative budget proposals are rooted in the principles of universal human rights and equality. Human rights are not a luxury, ladies and gentlemen. It is a fundamental aspect of human dignity that should be respected and protected in all aspects of life, including economic policy. We believe that every Ugandan deserves the opportunity to succeed, regardless of their background or the circumstances. We believe that it is possible to build a Uganda that works for everybody, not just a select few. The human rights approach is centered on the idea that economic policies should prioritize the rights and well-being of all people, especially the vulnerable ones. Unfortunately, here in Uganda, that is not the case. The Ugandan economy, as you all know, is characterized by gross corruption, inequality, and lack of opportunities for the majority of our people. Wealth and power are concentrated in the hands of a small group. And that is why we need an alternative budget which truly represents and prioritizes the needs and aspirations of all Ugandans, not just the few that hold power and influence. The alternative budget is not just a collection of numbers and figures. It is indeed a reflection of the values that we hold so dear as a party and as a team. Our national budget must prioritize the investments in sectors that will create jobs, that will improve people's livelihoods, and will enhance economic growth. Special attention should be given to health and education, and of course social protection programs that will benefit the ordinary Ugandans. We must invest in health care to ensure that every Ugandan has access to quality and affordable health care services for the purposes of increasing their productivity. Our health care workers and teachers must be paid and paid well. We must focus on creating an environment that is conducive for business growth, job creation, and all other developments. This requires deliberate investment in infrastructure, including roads, railways, and yes, the energy sector. We must reduce the burden of taxes and regulations on small and medium-sized businesses. Otherwise, we shouldn't expect peace in a country where young people are broke, are unemployed, and are hopeless. We must ensure that everyone has access to resources that they need to succeed in life. And this means investing in social protection programs such as universal health care and social security. Last year, ladies and gentlemen, this Parliament passed the National Health Insurance Scheme Bill, but up to now, the bill has not yet become law. It is a shame that 61 years after independence, we still rely on the foreign development partners to meet 41% of our health expenditure. The government of Uganda caters for only 16% and leaves the big burden to the ordinary citizen. We do not have a national health insurance scheme in place. The available health insurance plans are almost all private schemes, and yet even then they cover less than 2% of the population. Now, I did not say they cover 2% of the population. I said they cover less than 2% of the population. I believe many of you, if not all of you, have been following the scandal at NSSF. Over 14 trillion shillings of private employee savings is at risk of being stolen because of greed. And of course, it's being stolen by those that have power and influence. The situation is even worse at the police officers' circle, the Exodus circle, and the military officers' circle, the Wazalendo circle. The low-ranking officers find it almost impossible to access the savings, which savings are actually forcefully deducted off their salaries. Trillions are allocated to security, the security sector, but my friends, when you look at the livelihood of the men and women in uniform, it is sad. No wonder many soldiers and police officers are angry, bitter, and frustrated, and they end up venting that frustration and anger on the innocent citizens. Recently, many of you saw in the media that some police officers have actually gone to court over salary cuts. That's where we are now. I want to say it again, ladies and gentlemen, that our government will ensure that those who keep our nation safe earn better, with the lowest paid officer earning at least 1 million shillings. This will help, because if we pay them better, then we shall have the moral authority to demand that they treat the citizens better. If we treat them with dignity, they will treat our citizens with dignity. It's unfortunate that the regime continues to marginalize and isolate significant sections of our population. An old saying used to be that we shall not wait for Karamoja to develop. But today, a few elites in the regime, including the Speaker of this very Parliament, the Vice President, the Prime Minister, the Minister for Ethics and Integrity, and many others, they have decided to say we shall not allow Karamoja to develop. Ladies and gentlemen, it is sad, very sad, but anyone here who has traveled to Karinga or Kotido or Abim or other poverty-ravaged areas in Karamoja and seen the misery there, I'm sure they're still questioning why those thieves are still in office. I'm personally wondering and shocked that those Ugandans that protested the theft are in prison today, but the thieves are in office. They are being guarded and rewarded. That's where we are. Ladies and gentlemen, implementing these proposals requires a change in the allocation of resources, so we must cut spending in areas that do not necessarily contribute to the well-being of our people. We should not continue wasting money buying tear gas and killing machines, because these are just for terrorizing our people. We need to use our money better. It is not logical, ladies and gentlemen, that the police and the military were allocated 9 trillion in this current budget. 9 trillion. for police and the military. And the agriculture sector, which employs over 70% of Uganda's working population, was allocated only 1.4 trillion. We must restore hope in the thousands of young Ugandans who line up every day at Entebbe Airport in search for better life outside Uganda. And unfortunately, many of them, as you've seen, end up facing more indignity and more humiliation outside Uganda. Of course, with no protection and care whatsoever from the authorities here. We must increase the domestic revenue by cracking down on corruption. My sister has mentioned that we lose 10 trillion to corruption. It could be more, because in Uganda you can't even trust the numbers that they cook up every day. But we must increase the domestic revenue by, cracking down corruption and implementing a fair tax system. And that way we shall collect much more than the 25.8 trillion, which you all know cannot even finance half of our national budget. So I want to invite all of you, ladies and gentlemen, especially civil society organizations and private sector players, to engage with us in the process of liberating our country and directing our country's destiny. I am very confident that the alternative budget offers a viable roadmap, and to that end, it also addresses the most pressing economic issues of the country. I, however, must tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that the alternatives that you've heard from the leader of opposition and the adumbrations from fellow leaders, they are all brilliant. They are very good, but they cannot work in isolation. And that is why we must dedicate a significant portion of our efforts towards dislodging Museveni and ending the Museveni dictatorship. And this is the reason. It's because no matter how brilliant our alternative policies may be, they simply cannot be implemented under a dictatorship whose main preoccupation is keeping power and nothing else.